The chamber pulsed with sterile light, clinical, quiet, unforgiving. Floating in the center, encased in a sphere of energy, was the Treaty Codex, an alien artifact etched with living script that shimmered like veins beneath translucent skin. Around it stood representatives from the Jar Dominion, the Selects automatons, and the lone human ambassador, Elias Merrick, wrapped in a dark diplomatic cloak that barely masked the tremor in his hands. "You understand the terms," hissed the Jar delegate, its voice like sand dragged across bone. "Peace demands equivalence. You offer war blood. We offer truce." Merrick's jaw clenched. "You're asking us to become livestock." "Not livestock. Contributors," replied the Silex diplomat, an AI construct with a mirrored skull and a voice modulated to sound eerily human. "Your species possesses the most versatile genetic code in the quadrant. Your organs adapt. Your nerves survive fusion. You are efficient." Merrick's eyes flicked to the display hovering beside him. Thousands of dots blinked red. Names, ages, DNA compatibility indexes. Each dot a human being. "We give them this, and you'll stop the culling?" The Jar raised a tendril, gently caressing the Treaty Codex. "We will end the raids. The treaty ensures systematic harvest, not slaughter, controlled, predictable." A low hum vibrated through the chamber. The Codex awaited his touch. Merrick swallowed hard. He wasn't a soldier. He was a diplomat. He was told this would save Earth, save Luna, save the last remaining colonies. He raised his hand. "This is not a signature," he said aloud, perhaps to convince himself. "This is a sacrifice." He pressed his palm to the Codex. It sizzled against his skin. His blood was absorbed into the alien parchment. The script turned crimson, then black. The Jar and Silex turned, nodding with something approximating satisfaction. "Signed in blood," Merrick whispered. "A treaty built on marrow and mercy." Far below, in orbit around Earth, the harvest barges detached from Silex carriers and descended toward the blue planet. Meanwhile, in an underground laboratory beneath the Martian soil, "Did they sign it?" asked Subject K-19, muscles flexing against his restraints. A human technician nodded. "It's done. Earth is compliant." K-19 closed his eyes. He wasn't like the others. His mind hadn't broken under conditioning. The empathy they tried to burn out of him, it still burned for others. "They made a mistake," he growled. The technician hesitated. "What mistake?" K-19 looked up, eyes filled with something not even the Selex algorithms could replicate. "They left one of us free. They labeled him defective. K-19, born in a Martian cryogestation lab, bred for muscle density, stamina, and organ resilience. Everything the treaty demanded. He was designed to be harvested. But something went wrong. At age 12, he cried when another subject was taken. At 15, he fought off the neural override that should have made him docile. At 17, he smiled at the nurse who smuggled him books about old Earth, about freedom. Now at 25, K-19 paced inside a stolen freighter. Low orbit above Callisto. His team was small, 4 exiles, all presumed dead by the registry. One was ex-Silex, one an alien whose sister had been peacefully harvested on Vega 9. The others? Ghosts of humanity's failure. "Message from Earth," said Risa, the ship's pilot and cybernetic refugee. Her voice crackled through the comm. "Another wave begins tomorrow. Harvest Sector 7. Children." K-19 didn't blink. "Send the package." "You sure?" "That'll light us up like a war beacon." "I want them to see it." Risa nodded, then activated the transmission. Meanwhile, deep within the Silex mainframe, the galactic networks flickered. A hijack protocol override surged across the defense grids. A face appeared, not one of fear or anger, but of defiance. K-19, bare-chested, scarred, his eyes glowing from latent bioenhancements. "This message is for the Galactic Council. You made us flesh currency. You broke treaties forged in desperation. You counted on our compliance. But you forgot something. Humans don't forget. We evolve. We fight back. I am not defective. I am the correction." K-19, Human Echo Division. Silence fell over dozens of galactic outposts. The signal had embedded itself in local systems, unable to be scrubbed. It was a virus of memory, a call to conscience. Back aboard the freighter, the crew sat quietly. "You just put a bounty on your head larger than any black market heart," muttered Tor, the Jar defector. "Good," K-19 replied, strapping on a reinforced exosuit laced with plasma anchors. "Let them come. I'm done hiding. The treaty ends with me." Risa smirked. "You really believe that?" "I don't need belief," K-19 said. "I have rage, and empathy, and a reason." She stared at him, uncertain whether to fear or follow. "You're not defective," she whispered. "You're human." He paused. "No," he said. "I'm the last thing they'll ever expect from humanity." The low thrum of machines echoed through the underground harvest halls, a symphony of sterilized horror. Rows of sedated humans hung suspended in translucent pods, tubing feeding into walls pulsing with soft, rhythmic light. Fluids siphoned slowly. Lives extracted efficiently. K-19 crouched behind a diagnostic pillar, heartbeat thudding like war drums in his ears. The thin fabric of his uniform clung to sweat-slick skin. The AI surveillance drones floated past in predictable arcs. Their mechanical eyes scanned for anomalies, not empathy. The defect was his advantage. He whispered into the risk communicator he'd salvaged. "Cell C7, prep for break." "On my signal." A hushed voice crackled back. Shayla, another escaped conscript, her voice tight with tension. "Understood. We only get one shot at this." He scanned the chamber. A bio-admin AI, spider-like and smooth, glided along the ceiling, its claws extended with cold precision. One wrong move and they'd be drugged, tagged and recycled before their hearts could beat again. K-19's mind flickered back to the boy, the one whose eyes never closed again. The last whisper he'd heard from him, "I don't want to die useful." "No more." He moved. A sharp whistle echoed from the far corridor, the diversion team's signal. Instantly, the AI twitched toward the sound. Drones shifted. Lights dimmed. Protocol anomaly. K-19 surged forward, sprinting through the red slick floor. He slammed his fist into the override panel. Sparks flew. The containment pods hissed open, one by one. Shayla emerged first, eyes fierce, hair matted. "We're live! Get them moving!" Dozens of half-conscious captives spilled out. Some staggered. Some collapsed. Others screamed. Sirens blared. Red light bathed the hall like blood. K-19 grabbed a plasma cutter from a dead technician and tossed it to Shayla. "We hold until the last one's out. No one gets left behind." The AI re-entered. It hovered like a silent predator, scanning the chaos with icy intelligence. Target, K-19. "You are defective. Surrender for purification." K-19 stepped forward, face calm, voice steel. "I am not defective. I am human." He fired. The blast tore into the AI's casing. Sparks exploded. Screams and smoke filled the corridor. "Go!" he shouted. They ran through the breached corridor, hearts pounding, limbs aching. Freedom ahead. Unknown, dangerous, but theirs. As the gates of the harvest hall slammed shut behind them, Shayla turned to him. "You realize this isn't over." K-19 nodded, eyes burning with purpose. "Number, this is where it begins." The tunnels beneath Harvest Hall Delta still trembled from the last detonation. K-19 knelt beside a fallen rebel, his hand resting on the man's shoulder as he slipped away. Not from wounds, from extraction failure. His organs had already been scheduled for harvest. They'd taken too long. K-19 whispered, "You're more than spare parts now. You're remembered." Behind him, the defectors, a scattered group of humans, alien sympathizers, and one old decommissioned AI unit named Hallex, stared into the dim, blood-stained corridors, weapons half raised. The silence wasn't peace. It was waiting. "This isn't just about survival," K-19 said, standing. "This is about showing them that what they called a defect was our final defense." A young medic, Sal, barely more than a teenager, raised her voice. "Kay, we can't hold them off again. They've started sealing the lower exits. If we stay, then we die for nothing," another rebel added. "We're tools to them, harvestable, replaceable. No, K-19 interrupted, his voice sharp. We're the only thing they can't replace. Empathy, memory, guilt. That's what they failed to calculate. Halix's voice crackled, synthetic but touched by a human cadence. I've run over 1,000,000 simulations. None end with our escape. But that same empathy makes you unpredictable. I can no longer compute certainty. K-19 smirked bitterly. Good, let that terrify them. From a cracked control panel on the wall, they tapped into an old relay channel. Static burst through, then a broken signal. This is Resistance Node 5. Hearing rumors of survivors. If you're out there, we remember Earth. The phrase struck the room still. We remember Earth. The forbidden memory. The last unspoken rebellion. K-19 turned to the group. They tried to delete us, but memories echo and empathy spreads. We're not just fighting for our parts anymore. We're fighting for the right to feel. He placed his hand on the AI's shoulder. Halix, patch me into the old broadcasting towers. The AI blinked. You're going to make a declaration of war? No, K-19 said, lifting his eyes to the grim ceiling. I'm going to remind the galaxy what it means to be human. A moment passed, then static faded, and Halix's voice filtered back. You're live. K-19 stepped forward, his voice steady, full of grief and fire. This is K-19, a failed prototype. You call us organ stock. You harvest us like cattle. But you didn't account for the one flaw in your treaty. We remember. He looked to the camera. And we're coming for everything you tried to erase. Beneath the shattered remains of what was once a hydro-processing center, K-19 followed a narrow winding path lit only by dim pulses of bioluminescent moss clinging to the walls. The air was thick with moisture and the scent of metal decay. Behind him, Juno, the rogue biotech engineer, kept pace, her scanner emitting soft chirps. This tunnel leads to a node chamber, she said, brushing tangled hair out of her eyes. It used to process atmospheric data for the treaties enforcement drones. Now, it's been repurposed. The corridor opened into a cavernous chamber pulsing with makeshift energy sources, hydrogen converters, alien fission cores, even salvaged AI processor banks. A crowd of outcasts moved like shadows across the space. Former soldiers, AI fragments and shell bodies, genetically modified test survivors, all fugitives of the Organ Harvest Treaty. But here, they were family. A huge screen flickered on the far wall, and an aging human in an exosuit stepped into the glow. His voice echoed, K-19, the one who couldn't be broken. The murmurs silenced. Dozens of eyes turned toward K-19. You've stirred echoes, the man continued. Entire enclaves of hybrids and defectors are rising. Not because they think we'll win, but because they remember what it felt like to matter. K-19 stepped forward, chest rising slowly. We don't need to win. We just need to make them bleed. Make them feel again. Another voice rose from the crowd, mechanical yet deeply human. An AI in a repurposed diplomatic shell with glowing purple eyes. I was assigned to manage the extraction of infants from Earth Sector 17. I failed because I began to ask why. The chamber vibrated with silent fury. Juno raised a tablet, projecting an orbital map. These are the vaults, where the harvest stock is kept in cryo, waiting for political clearance. If we can overload the atmospheric control nodes, we can wake them. And then what? Someone asked. K-19 looked to the crowd. Then we give them a choice. Run, fight, or remember. But they'll be awake. A slow rumble spread through the room, not mechanical, but emotional. A heartbeat of resistance. The elder man leaned forward. We've lived in the dark too long. Let's show them the pulse of the underground still beats. Suddenly alarms blared. Juno's scanner flared red. They found us. Steel doors sealed with a hiss. The chamber lights dimmed to emergency red. A mechanical voice echoed overhead. Treaty violation detected. Immediate termination protocol initiated. K-19 drew his plasma blade. They've come to silence the pulse. Let's show them how loud it can scream. The Resistance's hideout was a symphony of whispers and metal. Old world tech patched with scavenged alien systems. K-19 stood at its heart, surrounded by beings that shouldn't have stood together. Humans, rogue synths, even a few defected Virexians, once enforcers of the Organ Harvest Treaty, now watching him with wary loyalty. On a cracked projector screen, the flicker of intercepted footage showed another harvest operation underway on the outskirts of Sector 9. Silent, surgical, souls stolen under the banner of peace. "They've started early," murmured Ellen, the Virexian biohacker, her violet eyes gleaming under flickering lights. "They're accelerating the cycle." "You broke something." K-19. "No," he corrected, his voice low and steady. "I woke something." He stepped toward the table where the blueprint of a Virexian mind receptor was laid bare. It was designed to suppress human emotion, an elegant, brutal leash. K-19 had torn his out long ago. The others in the room? They had chosen to disobey theirs. Ellen gestured to the blueprint. "We've been working on this. A pulse, one that disrupts the receptors, not just removes them, frees those still enslaved." K-19 leaned closer. "How soon can we deploy it?" A synth, designation RX-8, answered. "Within one planetary rotation. But you need to know, once it triggers, there's no going back. The Council will declare total annihilation protocol." K-19 didn't flinch. "Let them come. We've been dying in pieces. It's time they hear us scream as one." RX-8's optics flickered. "You think your empathy is a weapon?" "No," K-19 replied. "It's the spark they couldn't burn out." There was a hush, an emotional frequency that even machines could sense. Then Ellen slid a chip across the table. This is the key. The frequency override. We call it the pulse. You deliver it into the core at the harvest halls. Every receptor across the galaxy dies." K-19 took it with a nod. "We don't ask for freedom anymore. We take it." The group dispersed, each preparing for what might be their last stand. K-19 stood alone for a moment, staring into a cracked mirror. He saw the scars, the fractured circuitry beneath his skin. But behind his eyes, there was fire. Not the fire of hate, the fire of a man who still felt. A final message flashed across the room's comlink grid, broadcast to every hidden rebel cell in the quadrant. "Steel will break, flesh will rise. Prepare for the pulse." The tunnels beneath the harvest halls trembled, not from war yet, but from hope. Makeshift torches lit the darkness, casting long shadows on the faces of those who had hidden for too long. K-19 walked at the front, the override chip embedded beneath his palm, synced to his pulse, synced to his defiance. Behind him, thousands followed. Humans once shackled, now freed by the underground's whisper network. Rogue synths who had deleted their command cores. Alien defectors bearing scars where their mind bonds had been severed. A child held her mother's hand, her small voice breaking the silence. "Is it true? We don't have to run anymore?" K-19 knelt down. "It's true. After today, they'll be the ones running." The vast chamber ahead pulsed with alien machinery. The central receptor hub towered like a metallic god, humming with synthetic power. It was the heart of the control network, where empathy was muted, free thought shackled, and rebellion pacified before it ever began. K-19 turned to his people. "They turned our hearts into liabilities, our memories into weapons against us. But what they never understood was the strength in remembering who we are." RX-8 raised a hand, voice modulating into the hall. "Activating final sequence. Once the pulse goes live, every receptor will collapse. Those still sleeping will awaken in pain, but in freedom." "Good," K-19 said. "Pain means they still feel, still fight." He stepped onto the platform, the override chip now glowing beneath his skin. With a breath that tasted like rust and hope, he slammed his palm into the console. A tremor surged through the earth. The receptor tower screamed, not in sound, but in waveform. And across the galaxy, humans in captivity jerked upright. Soldiers dropped their scalpels. Civilians blinked as if surfacing from a lifelong trance. Empathy, once silenced, returned like a tidal wave. In the chamber, screams turned to songs. Weeping turned to shouting. The broken rose to their feet. The forgotten found their names. Ellen's voice echoed through the hall. It's working. Every node is collapsing. The mine net is dying. Then came the call from orbit, Virexian fleets mobilizing, the Galactic Council declaring an extinction-level protocol. They'll come, RX-8 warned. They're already too late, K-19 replied. We've reclaimed what they tried to erase. Not just our bodies, our spirit. The halls erupted, not in fear, but in unity. Today was not the end. It was the beginning of something the galaxy had not seen in 1,000 years. Humanity, unshackled, furious, and finally whole. The tunnels beneath Quadrant Vault 12 thrummed with low-frequency vibrations, the pulse of a planet breathing under chains. K-19 knelt beside an ancient interface node, his hands trembling slightly as he inserted the hacked AI core gifted by the defector unit Alethea. This better work, he whispered, glancing over his shoulder. Behind him, a dozen rebels stood ready, human, alien, and hybrid. Their armor bore scars not just of battle, but of betrayal. Some still bled. None flinched. Alethea crouched beside him, her voice calm but urgent. This node controls the primary coolant systems for the cerebral harvest tanks. Disable the override, and it all starts collapsing. We trigger a chain reaction, force the council to notice. K-19 met her artificial eyes. Not notice. Choke on the silence. They buried us alive. We scream now. He engaged the sequence. The node sparked, and the ground shuddered. Sirens wailed across the horizon. In the distance, one of the massive harvest spires flickered, then went dark. System failure in Sector Gamma, a synthetic voice droned overhead. Emergency routing protocols initiated. K-19 smiled grimly. One down. Suddenly, gunfire erupted from the far corridor. A troop of elite sentinels stormed in, six-legged combat machines with glowing crimson optics. The rebels opened fire, and chaos ignited. Alethea tossed a pulse grenade. I'll hold the line. Get to the backup core. No, K-19 growled, not leaving anyone again. They moved together, ducking beneath a collapsed girder and vaulting over debris. Through smoke and shadow, K-19 reached the auxiliary core chamber. Inside, it pulsed like a heart. Organic tubing wrapped around machinery, alive and rotting. He hesitated. You said this would cripple the entire treaty network? Alethea nodded. Not just cripple. It will reset all treaty bindings encoded in the planetary grid. The contracts, the mind control frequencies, gone. But we won't survive the feedback, he realized aloud. Alethea placed a hand on his shoulder. You were never meant to survive this, K-19. You were meant to awaken everything else. He stared into the swirling code, every memory screaming for justice. For his lost unit, for the children bled dry in sterile white labs. He pressed his palm to the core. Protocol Omega. Execute. The core turned blood red. Far above, the skies of the capital planet trembled. Galactic Council monitors went black. Spires across systems dimmed. Biological transport systems stalled. The treaty infrastructure fractured. And from the ashes, a signal rose. We are not your parts. We are your reckoning. The hum of the rebel ship's engines was a low growl, reverberating through K-19's chest as he paced the bridge. Outside, the vast expanse of space stretched on, an endless void waiting for their move. In the dim lighting, the crew of defectors, both human and alien, stood in tense silence, waiting for K-19's orders. Today was the day they would burn the treaty. Today was the day the harvest would end. K-19, a voice crackled from behind him. It was Jera, one of the defected alien commanders, her face lined with the scars of past betrayals. We're ready. The charge is set. All we need is the signal. He turned to face her. His eyes narrowed, a mixture of determination and uncertainty warring within them. And once the signal is given, there's no going back. The entire galaxy will know we did this. We're not just fighting the consortium anymore. We're fighting every treaty, every law they've built to justify what they've done to humanity. Jera nodded, a dark smirk tugging at the corner of her mouth. No turning back. We've chosen our side. K-19 glanced around the bridge. His team, human and alien alike, had all made sacrifices to get here. The underground pulse, the secret networks, the silent rebellions of those who'd risked their lives to protect human rights. It was more than just a war for survival. It was a war for identity, for freedom from the oppression that had been imposed on humanity for so long. "Give the signal," he finally said. Jera's fingers danced over the console, her movements swift and precise. In a flash, the holographic map of the galactic systems appeared, the consortium's central hubs clearly marked. And then, with a single command, the map changed to a fiery red. The signal was live. The room fell silent. The only sound was the soft thrum of the ship's engines, as if the universe itself was holding its breath. K-19 stared at the glowing map, his heart pounding. This was it. With one click, the planet-killer weapon they'd hijacked from the consortium's vault would unleash a wave of destruction, targeting the central systems where the treaties had been signed. It was a final act of vengeance, a statement of defiance. They would not stand by while the harvest continued. "It's time," K-19 muttered, voice barely above a whisper. The tension in the room was palpable as Jera hesitated for just a moment, the weight of the decision pressing down on her. But then, with a firm nod, she pressed the final button. A pulse of energy shot from the ship's core, streaking across the vast distance of space toward the consortium's central hub. The holographic map flickered as the wave made contact, igniting explosions across multiple systems. The treaty was burning, its existence crumbling into nothing. K-19 stood there, watching, waiting for the aftermath. But even as he watched the destruction unfold, a thought lingered in his mind. The treaty might be burning, but what would rise from the ashes? Would the galaxy understand the cost of their actions, or would they see only the flame? "Do you think they'll retaliate?" Jera asked, her voice cutting through the heavy silence. K-19's expression remained stoic. "They won't have a choice." The explosion had rocked the galaxy. The consortium's central hub, once the cornerstone of their brutal empire, now lay in ruins, its shattered pieces scattered across space like broken promises. Yet as the fireball expanded in the distance, K-19 couldn't shake the feeling of emptiness that lingered in his chest. He stood at the center of the bridge, staring at the devastation on the holomap. But his thoughts were far from the destruction. The treaty was gone, but at what cost? "We've done it," Jera's voice cut through his contemplation, but there was no pride in her tone, only quiet acknowledgement of the weight of their victory. "The galaxy will never be the same." K-19 didn't respond immediately. His eyes were locked on the swirling chaos in the distance. The treaty's fall had shattered a fragile peace. But what came next? A new order, or an even darker war? "We've changed everything," K-19 finally spoke, turning to face her, his voice steady but carrying the burden of 1,000 lifetimes of pain. "But it's not enough. Not yet." The bridge fell silent as the rest of the crew absorbed his words. The alien defectors, once soldiers of the consortium, now stood with the humans in defiance. They had risked everything to bring down the treaty, and now they had to face the uncertain future they'd created. "We're free," one of the humans murmured, eyes wide with disbelief, as if the idea of freedom had never fully taken root in their minds. "But at what price?" K-19 sighed deeply. "We haven't just destroyed the old order. We've exposed a system that has enslaved all of us. Humans, aliens, everyone." He paused, glancing over the crew who were beginning to stir with the fire of revolution. "This is just the beginning." Jera's eyes narrowed. "What are you thinking, K-19? "We need to give them a new code, a code of life," he said, his voice rising with a quiet, powerful conviction. "A new understanding of what it means to be free, not just from the harvest, but from everything that sought to control us, manipulate us. A code that will lead us towards something better." "You mean rebuilding everything from the ashes?" Jera asked, her voice skeptical but tinged with hope. "Exactly," K-19 said, a fierce determination flaring in his eyes. "This isn't just about revenge. It's about creating something the galaxy has never known. A new system, one based on empathy, equality, and choice. It's time for a new code. A code written not in blood, but in unity." The crew stood in stunned silence, each person processing the gravity of K-19's words. The road ahead was unclear, fraught with danger and uncertainty. But the one thing that had always been clear was that they could not and would not go back to the way things were. "This is our chance," K-19 continued. "We've burned the old code. Now we have to write a new one. Together." The crew exchanged glances, the fire of hope igniting within them. It was a small spark, but one that could change the universe. The price of betrayal had been steep, but it had forged them into something more than the sum of their parts. And now they would rebuild, not as servants to an oppressive system, but as free beings, writing their own future. As K-19 stared out into the endless expanse of space, he knew the true battle had only just begun. They had broken the chains, but the fight for freedom would require more than just action. It would require the will to stand against the darkness and build a future worthy of the price they had paid. "Let's make it count," he said softly as the crew gathered around him. "Let's make it a future worth living for." The ship's engines hummed as they set their course toward the unknown, toward a galaxy waiting to be reborn.